Elsa was 17 years old the day before yesterday. Next year, she'll turn 20.
Yay.
How come? It's possible if the present day is January 1st, while Elsa's birthday is on the 31st of December. The day before yesterday, on December 30, she was still 17 years old. Yesterday, on the 31st of December, she turned 18. Thus, this year, Elsa turns 19 and next year 20. Elsa and her sister Helga explore an old attic in their parents' house. It's very dark and dirty. After that, they go downstairs to have some lunch. Helga's face is all covered with dust, while Elsa's face is super clean. But still, only Elsa goes to the bathroom to wash her face. Why? Elsa noticed that her sister's face was dirty, so she thought her face must be dirty too. As for Helga, she saw that Elsa's face was clean and assumed that her own face was clean too. After lunch, Elsa and Helga go for a walk across an enchanted forest. They reach the riverbank, but the bridge is closed for repairs. The sisters notice two dwarfs fishing in a boat near the bridge. They agree to help the sisters, but their boat is very tiny. It can fit either one sister or two dwarfs. Luckily, they manage to solve this issue. Elsa and Helga cross the river on the same boat. How? Well, first of all, one of the dwarfs brought his fellow on the opposite bank. Then he headed back for the sisters alone. Helga got into the boat and crossed the river. She gave the second dwarf the boat, and he returned to the opposite bank. He picked his fellow dwarf and brought him to Helga. Then one of the dwarfs swam to Elsa and passed the boat to her. She crossed the river and joined Helga, and finally, the second dwarf returned to his fellow. Helga and Elsa keep on walking and get lost in the forest. There are 3 roads to the nearest town. The first route is filled with mutant plants which feed on humans. The second path leads through an ice cave with a hungry dragon frozen inside a huge ice cube. The third route leads through a village of fairies. Their magic makes humans lose their minds. Which way is safe? Well, the dragon is trapped inside the ice cube, so it's not that dangerous. Finally, the sisters reach the town. They're walking down the main street. Suddenly, someone throws an orange right at Helga's head. Elsa identifies the apartment from which the fruit fell out and goes there to complain. She knocks, and a young man opens the door right away. Elsa explains that her sister was hit by an orange that fell from his window. But the guy says, "I was washing my dog when you knocked. Only me and my pet live here, so you confused the floors." But Elsa didn't believe him. Why? According to the man, he was bathing his only pet, but the dog's hair is dry. Therefore, his story is fake. Elsa and Helga enter the local home decor shop. Helga takes a picture of her sister standing in front of the mirror. Can you spot anything odd in this photo? Take a closer look at the mirror. Elsa's hands are reflected wrong, as well as the sale poster behind her. She must be a vampire. Just kidding. The sisters continue exploring the shop, but suddenly Elsa begins to scream and runs away. That's because one of these ladies is not alive. Can you guess who? The first woman is an ordinary human. There's a mirror behind her. The third lady has a painting of herself in the background. And the second lady, who's looking over her shoulder, is a phantom.
Oh, God.
Her reflection in the mirror doesn't match the reality. Elsa decides to hide in a building nearby. Surprise! It's a pet shop. Elsa wanders around it and spots one weird detail. Can you see it too? The turtle is wearing sunglasses. The locals tell Elsa and Helga about a creepy werewolf who has been scaring the citizens for several weeks. They only know that this werewolf is a lady and she has a husband. He's the only person who can calm her down. Elsa finds 3 suspects who might be the werewolf's husband, but none of them admits it. Can you find him? He's the second guy. There are suspicious brownish hairs on his clothes, although his own hair is blonde. The next day, Helga has a birthday party. Elsa goes to the bakery to purchase a cake for her. She's late, so she rushes over and bumps into a waiter. Elsa hits her head and forgets what cake Helga asked her to buy. She remembers just 3 things. It shouldn't have any green elements, the cake frosting shouldn't include more than 1 color, and it must have at least 1 berry. Can you help Elsa find the correct cake? Elsa should take the 4th cake. It's a chocolate cheesecake, so it doesn't have anything green. The glazing is brown and is decorated with cherries. A perfect match. Elsa buys the cake and leaves. The bakery is located inside the highest tower in town. Elsa enters the elevator to go down, but she hits the wrong button and finds herself on the roof. She decides to take some pictures with the iconic huge clock installed at the top of this tower. Oops! Elsa drops her phone from the roof. She decides to leave, but someone has already locked the door, and the elevator won't work, so she's trapped on the roof. Luckily, Elsa can still change the time of the clock. What time should Elsa set on the clock to make someone notice and rescue her? If she sets 5:05 on the clock, it'll look like an SOS signal. Finally, Elsa escapes from the tower and heads to the parking lot. Here's her car. Can you figure out the number of the place where it's parked? '87. Elsa arrives home. Helga shows her vacation photos sent by her new boyfriend, Kyle. In this case, you can see Kyle, his friend Bob, and a humanoid robot, Neo. Neo is standing next to Bob. A person wearing the yellow mask is not a man. What color is Kyle's mask? According to the terms, only the 3rd guy can be Kyle, so his mask is blue. The birthday party is going well. It's almost midnight, so Elsa goes to the kitchen and adds candles on the birthday cake. Suddenly, she remembers that the only lighter in the house is upstairs in her room. She leaves the cake at the table for a minute. Then Elsa returns and sees the cake smashed all over the floor.
Oh, no.
She questions 3 suspects. Lauren says, "I was in the living room all night. I don't know who did it." Wendy says, "I went outside to watch the full moon. It's so beautiful tonight." Kyle says, "I was shooting a TikTok dance with Helga." Who ruined the cake? Wendy. Take a look out the window. The moon is not full. Busted. The next morning, Helga wakes up earlier than Elsa and checks her feed. Breaking news: a legendary thief ran away from a nearby prison and now creeps around the town. He's a talented shapeshifter, so no one knows for sure what he might look like. Suddenly, Helga hears someone ringing on the door. She opens and faces 2 guys who introduce themselves. Bob is a gardener from a nearby park, and Peter is a garbage man. Both guys want to use a bathroom, so they ask Helga to let them in. But only one of them is safe to invite over. Can you guess who? Bob is wearing clothes with red stains, but he's also holding a brush, so he was probably just painting a fence. Let's take a closer look at Peter's facial hair. One mustache has come unglued. It's fake. So he must be the runaway criminal from the news. Now Carol was invited to a Halloween party in an abandoned house. Her friends asked if she was up for a challenge, and she said yes. Soon enough, she was locked inside a room. In this room, there was one door and 3 light switches next to it. Behind the door was an empty closet with nothing but a light bulb. Her task was to figure out which switch controls the light bulb inside the closet. She could flip the switches in whatever way she wanted, but once she opened the door, she couldn't touch the switches anymore. After some minutes of thinking, she was able to get it right. How did Carol do it? Okay, let's go step by step. She flipped switch number 1 and then waited a few minutes. She flipped it back to off and then immediately flipped switch number 2. Then she opened the door and checked the light. The bulb was off, so she discovered that it wasn't switch number 2 that controlled the light. So she decided to touch the bulb to test if it was hot or cold. If the bulb had been cold, that would have meant that switch number 3 controlled it. But the bulb was hot. So that meant that switch number 1 controlled 1. Way to go, Carol! To get back to the party, Carol had to solve another riddle. There were 2 hourglasses in front of her. One hourglass measures 7 minutes, and the other one measures 4 minutes. She needed to time 9 minutes using both hourglasses. How could she do it? First, she turned both hourglasses at the same time. By the time the 4-minute glass finished, there were still 3 minutes left on the other one. She flipped the 4-minute glass again. When the 7-minute glass was empty, there was 1 minute left on the other glass. And once the 4-minute glass emptied again, there was 1 minute's worth of sand at the bottom half of the 7-minute timer. She flipped it over again, so there was 1 minute worth of sand on the top of the glass. And when the 7-minute timer finally emptied again, 9 minutes elapsed in total. Now look at this party scene. Everyone is dancing in their Halloween costumes and having an enjoyable time. You've been told that one of these people is a real vampire. Can you figure out who it is? Let's see. The guy on the left is drinking something red, but he has a shadow, so he can't be a real vampire. The second lady looks creepy, could be her, but if you look closely at the mirror on the wall, you'll see her reflection, so it can't be her. And we can also see the reflection of the fourth guy in the mirror. This only leaves one lady left. She must be the real vampire. Anna sat down to watch her favorite TV show. She made some popcorn, turned on the TV, and nestled comfortably to binge-watch an entire season. Her cat Pepper sat down next to her, but after 5 minutes of screen time, Anna suddenly passed out. Look at the image. Can you guess what happened there? Anna's cat Pepper got scared with a loud thump that came from the TV. It jumped on top of Anna and it scared the life out of her. That's why she passed out. Brendan was camping alone in a remote location. He left his campsite and hiked 3 miles south. Then he turned east and hiked for another 3 miles. After that, he turned north and hiked for another 3 miles. After walking 9 miles, he was back to the exact same point from where he had left off. Plus, he got there just in time to find a bear trying to open his tent and steal his food. Look at the image. Can you guess the only place in the world where Brendan could be right now? It's the North Pole. That's the only place where you can hike for 3 miles south, east, and north and end up exactly where you left off. Fraser bought a cozy home in Vancouver. On a sunny day, he decided to take his dog out for a walk. When he let his dog off the leash, it ran extremely far away from him. At some point, the dog was opposite him across a huge lake. Fraser called his dog, who managed to cross safely to the other side of the lake without getting wet or using a boat. Can you guess how the dog managed to do it? Well, that's a trick question, but the dog could easily cross the lake since it was frozen. Your best friend invited you for brunch at a place called Wally's World. As soon as you arrive there, the hostess tells you that you need to solve a riddle to get inside. She tells us that there is only one rule at Wally's World. Over there is pizza with cheese, but no pizza with sausage. There is pepper, but no salt. There is a door, yet no entrance or exit. With this information, can you guess what the law is? Everything in Wally's World must contain double letters. So things such as pizza, pepper, and cheese are allowed inside. Whew! That sure wasn't obvious, huh? On a snowy winter afternoon, Dr. Brown was resting in front of the fireplace. Suddenly, somebody threw a snowball at his window. The hit was so strong that the glass shattered. Dr. Brown stood up just in time to see 3 neighborhood boys running away. They were brothers with the names John Smith, Mark Smith, and Dave Smith. The next day, a paper note was left on Dr. Brown's door. There it was written, a question mark, then Smith. He threw the snowball. Dr. Brown knew immediately which brother had done it. Can you figure it out too? It was Mark. You see, the note said, question mark Smith. He threw the snowball. But the boys were clever and put a question mark instead to test Dr. Brown's detective abilities. Henry was backpacking through Brazil by himself. One evening at around 8 p.m., he got very hungry and decided to look for a cozy restaurant to have some dinner. He walked into a traditional restaurant only to find a customer and a waiter arguing over something. The customer said that he had ordered clam soup, while the waiter was saying he had only ordered a cup of tea. Henry saw something that immediately showed him who was lying. Can you find out too? The customer is lying. Behind him, there's a huge sign that says the restaurant only serves soup from 1 to 4 p.m. Since it was 8 p.m. in the evening, the waiter would have never accepted the customer's order in the first place. Cheryl ran into her house extremely worried. I set off as soon as I heard the news, she told the police officer. I was at my parents' house in another town. What's happened to my husband? Well, the police said, somebody hurt Mr. Moffat, and he ended up in the hospital. He's going to be okay, but we still need to find out who did this to him. The police officer has questioned 3 suspects so far. Mr. Moffat's secretary said, I was sent to visit Mr. Moffat's business partner in the morning. Some important documents needed signatures. The cook said, I haven't left the kitchen today. Mr. Moffat wanted me to prepare a meal for him and his wife. The housekeeper said, I didn't hear anything today. I was doing some household chores all day long. After that, I was so tired, I decided to take a nap. The police officer realized who the culprit was in no time. Can you figure out who did it? It was the cook. Mr. Moffat didn't ask him to cook anything for his wife, since she had been out of town all along.